Previously on the Ashford. Thorne St. James thought his new apartment was perfect until he realized he could hear everything his neighbor said through the walls. Violette Westbrook, brilliant COO and hotel heiress, has no idea someone is listening to her fights with toxic ex-boyfriend Julian, her tears at 2 a.m., her quiet moments of despair when she whispers, "I hate my life," to an empty apartment. When Thorne left an anonymous note under her door, "You're stronger than you think," she taped it to her bathroom mirror and reads it every morning like a prayer. But she doesn't know who left it, doesn't know her neighbor is falling for her through stolen fragments of conversation, doesn't know her father Augustus owns the Ashford and has secrets darker than anyone suspects, and she definitely doesn't know that the previous tenant of 4A, Dr. Emma Chen, disappeared 6 months ago without a trace. This week, everything changes. This week, they meet. Now on to today's episode. Violette Westbrook woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of her alarm and the immediate crushing memory of Sunday dinner. She lay there for a moment staring at the ceiling of her bedroom, cream-colored plaster that had probably witnessed a century of other people's insomnia, and let the humiliation wash over her in waves. Her father's pointed comments about Harrison's initiative and drive, her mother's disappointed sighs every time Violette tried to defend herself. Julian sitting at their family table like he belonged there, like he hadn't spent their last conversation telling her she'd die alone. The worst part wasn't even the dinner itself. The worst part was that she'd known it would be terrible and she'd gone anyway. Because saying no to Augustus Westbrook was harder than enduring 6 hours of subtle criticism and not-so-subtle comparisons to her younger brother who could apparently do no wrong. Violette hit the alarm, twice as always, because the first time was aspirational and the second time was mandatory, and forced herself out of bed. Monday, new week, fresh start. She could do this. She'd been doing this her entire life. The hardwood was cold against her bare feet as she walked to the bathroom. January in Manhattan meant the heating was perpetually insufficient, and the floors were perpetually freezing, and she made a mental note for the 1,000th time to buy slippers, and for the 1,000th time knew she wouldn't. She caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror and winced, dark circles under her eyes despite the expensive eye cream Sloane had bought her for Christmas, hair a disaster, face puffy from crying herself to sleep after calling Sloane and reliving every terrible moment of dinner. And there, taped to the top corner of the mirror, the note, "You're stronger than you think." A neighbor. 8 words on a torn piece of legal pad paper that she'd found under her door Friday morning and had been clinging to like a lifeline ever since. She didn't know who'd left it, had spent most of the weekend trying to figure it out. The elderly woman in 4C, the young couple in 4D, someone on a different floor entirely who'd heard about Julian somehow. It didn't matter. What mattered was that someone had cared enough to leave it. Someone in this building full of wealthy strangers who barely acknowledged each other's existence had taken the time to write 8 words and slip them under her door.
"Stronger than I think,"
she murmured to her reflection. Then she turned on the shower and tried to believe it. The shower was scalding, the way she liked it, hot enough to burn away the previous day's failures and leave her skin pink and raw. She stood under the spray longer than necessary, letting water pound against her shoulders, trying to wash away the memory of Julian cornering her in her parents' hallway.
Vi, come on, we need to talk.
"There's nothing to talk about."
Your mother thinks we should give it another try. My mother thinks...
"I don't care what our mothers think. We're done, Julian."
You're making a mistake.
"The only mistake I made was staying with you as long as I did."
She'd walked away before he could respond. Got in her car. Drove back to Manhattan with her hands shaking on the steering wheel and tears she refused to let fall until she was safely in her own apartment where no one could see. Except someone had seen, or heard. Because Friday morning there'd been a note. Violette turned off the shower, wrapped herself in a towel, and started the familiar routine of transformation. Wet hair into a towel turban, expensive serum on her face, the kind that promised to erase stress lines and probably did nothing but cost $200 a bottle. Moisturizer, eye cream, the armor of skincare that women were expected to maintain if they wanted to be taken seriously in boardrooms full of men who rolled out of bed and showed up in wrinkled suits. At 5:45 a.m., she blow-dried her hair, straight, sleek, pulled back into a bun so severe it gave her a headache by noon every day, but made her look competent and in control, which was the point. At 5:52 a.m., she applied makeup, foundation to cover the evidence of crying, concealer under her eyes, mascara and lipstick because God forbid a woman show up to work looking human. At 5:58 a.m., she surveyed the result in the mirror. Violette Westbrook, COO of Westbrook International. Polished, professional, completely fine. The woman staring back at her looked nothing like the woman who'd sobbed into her pillow at midnight. Perfect. She walked to her closet, a walk-in that was bigger than her first apartment, back when she was 22 and trying to prove she didn't need her father's money by living in a studio in Hell's Kitchen that had mice in a bathtub in the kitchen. She'd lasted 4 months before Augustus had suggested she move somewhere more appropriate for a Westbrook. Now she lived in the Ashford, a building her father owned, though he claimed it was a real estate investment and not a way to keep tabs on his daughter. Violette pulled out a suit, charcoal gray, Armani, tailored to fit perfectly because off-the-rack suits never fit women properly, and she'd learned that lesson early. Paired it with a burgundy silk blouse that cost more than most people's monthly rent and made her look powerful, which she needed today. Today she had to face Marcus. Marcus Chen, no relation to the previous tenant of 4A who'd apparently disappeared, though Violette had noticed the coincidence, was VP of International Development and her father's golden boy. 43, Harvard MBA, 15 years at Westbrook International, and absolutely convinced that he should be COO instead of her. He made that clear at every board meeting, every strategic planning session, every opportunity he got to undermine her in front of Augustus. At 6 a.m. exactly, Violette started her coffee. The espresso machine was a Breville, top of the line, left by the previous tenant along with some furniture. She'd been grateful not to have to furnish the place from scratch, though sometimes she wondered about the woman who'd lived here before. Where had she gone? Why leave an expensive coffee machine behind? The machine roared to life, producing a double espresso that Violette drank standing at her kitchen counter while checking emails on her phone. 47 unread messages since she'd checked at 11 p.m. last night. She scrolled through them, deleting the spam, flagging the important ones, responding to the urgent ones. Richard from the board wanted to discuss the Singapore numbers. Again. Marcus had sent a memo at 10:47 p.m., because of course he had, outlining his concerns about her timeline for the Dubai property, copying her father, naturally. Her assistant Emma, not the disappeared tenant, different Emma, had forwarded the agenda for this morning's executive meeting. And her father had sent a single-line email at 6:47 a.m., "We need to talk about Harrison's proposal." My office, 10 a.m. Violette stared at that last one and felt her stomach twist. Whenever Augustus wanted to talk about Harrison, it meant he was going to criticize Violette by comparison. Harrison closed 3 deals last quarter. What have you accomplished? Harrison is showing real leadership in Europe. When will you show the same initiative? Harrison thinks we should expand faster. Why are you so cautious? She set down her phone and picked up her coffee, draining it in 3 burning gulps. At 6:10 a.m., she made her first call of the day.
Richard, it's Violette. I know it's early. Did you review my response to the Singapore analysis?
I did. Your reasoning is sound. But Marcus makes a compelling case for accelerating the timeline.
Marcus makes a compelling case for everything. That doesn't mean he's right.
Violette.
I'm not being stubborn, Richard. I'm being realistic. The Singapore market is volatile right now. Rushing in could cost us millions. My recommendation is we wait 6 months, reassess, and move forward when conditions stabilize.
Your father seems to agree with Marcus.
Of course he did.
Then I'll discuss it with my father at our 10 o'clock meeting.
I'm just saying, it might be wise to show more flexibility. The board appreciates confidence, not caution.
Translation: stop being so careful. Be more like your brother.
Noted. I'll see you at this morning's executive meeting.
She hung up before Richard could offer more unsolicited advice about how to do her job. At 6:13 a.m., she started the music, Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece her mother used to play when Violette was young, Before Catherine Westbrook had decided that being a pianist wasn't an appropriate hobby for the wife of a billionaire and had quit playing entirely, Violette let the melancholy piano fill her apartment while she finished getting ready. Shoes, jewelry, watch, the final touches that transformed her from a woman having a crisis to a woman who ran a corporation. At 6:15 a.m. and 30 seconds, she was always exactly 30 seconds late, a small rebellion against Augustus's obsession with punctuality, she grabbed her bag, her phone, her keys, and her carefully constructed armor. Then she opened her apartment door and stepped into the hallway. The elevator was empty when it arrived, thank God, because she wasn't ready for small talk with neighbors who might ask how her weekend was. Violette pressed L for lobby and watched the numbers descend. 4, 3, 2, 1. The doors opened onto the marble lobby.
Good morning, Ms. Westbrook.
James was at the concierge desk, looking up with his professional smile.
Morning, James.
Your car is waiting.
Thank you.
She walked across the lobby in heels that were already starting to pinch. She'd broken these in, or thought she had, but apparently her feet had other ideas. Outside, the January morning was brutal. Cold enough that her breath fogged. Cold enough that she was grateful for the Blacktown car idling at the curb. Her driver, Vincent, opened the door.
Good morning, Ms. Westbrook.
Morning, Vincent.
She slid into the back seat, grateful for the heated leather and the privacy partition that meant she didn't have to make conversation. Vincent pulled away from the curb, heading toward Midtown and Westbrook International's headquarters on 57th Street. Violette pulled out her phone and opened her text messages. One new message from Sloan. How are you doing this morning? Still processing Sunday dinner from hell? Violette typed back, processing, surviving, wishing I could fire my entire family. Sloane's response came immediately. Can I help you hide the bodies? Violette smiled despite herself. I'll let you know after my 10 a.m. meeting with Dad.
Good luck. Call me after. I want details.
Will do. Love you.
Love you too. Remember, stronger than you think.
The note. Sloane had been obsessed with the note since Violette had told her about it Friday night. Someone in your building is in love with you, Sloane had declared. That's a love note disguised as encouragement. It's 8 words from a stranger. It's sweet and mysterious, and you should figure out who left it. Violette had laughed, but the idea had taken root. What if the note leaver was someone she'd passed in the hallway, someone who'd noticed her, someone who'd heard about Julian somehow and wanted to help? The thought was strangely comforting, that somewhere in the Ashford someone had noticed she was struggling and had cared enough to leave a note. Westbrook International's headquarters occupied 12 floors of a glass and steel tower on 57th Street. The lobby was all marble and modern art, and the kind of aggressive minimalism that was supposed to signal wealth and power. Violette rode the private elevator to the executive floor, 12th floor naturally, because Augustus believed in being above everyone else literally and figuratively. The elevator opened onto thick carpet and hushed voices and assistants who looked up when she passed and immediately looked busy.
Morning, Emma. Coffee?
Please. And the files for the Singapore meeting.
Already on your desk. And your father's assistant called. He wants to move your 10 o'clock to 9:30.
Of course he did.
Fine. Confirm with her.
Violette walked into her office. Corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows, view of Central Park that was supposed to justify the 80-hour weeks and the constant criticism. She dropped her bag on her desk and stood at the window for a moment, looking out at Manhattan waking up, lights coming on in apartments, traffic building on the streets below. 8 million people starting their Monday mornings, most of them probably not dreading a meeting with their father. Her phone buzzed. Text from Harrison. Heard you stormed out of dinner early. Very mature, Vi. She didn't respond. Another buzz. This time, Augustus. My office. 9:30. Don't be late. She typed back a single word. Noted. At 8 a.m., the executive team meeting started. Violette sat in the conference room with 8 other executives, all men except for her and Patricia from HR, who mostly stayed silent during these meetings because Augustus didn't believe HR had valuable strategic input. Marcus sat directly across from her, perfectly groomed in his perfectly tailored suit, looking like he'd slept 8 hours and woken up ready to conquer the world.
Let's start with Singapore. Violette, walk us through your analysis.
She did, professionally, thoroughly, laying out all the reasons why accelerating their timeline would be a mistake. When she finished, Augustus turned to Marcus.
Your thoughts?
I think Violette's concerns are valid, but I also think we're being too conservative. Our competitors are moving into Southeast Asia aggressively. If we wait 6 months, we'll lose market advantage.
That's a risk I'm willing to take if it means we don't lose $50 million on a property we rushed into without proper market analysis.
With respect, Violette, your caution is costing us opportunities.
With respect, Marcus, your aggression cost us $12 million on the Jakarta property 2 years ago when you insisted we couldn't wait for the regulatory approval.
His jaw tightened.
That was a different situation.
Was it?
Enough. We'll table this discussion until we have more data. Marcus, I want a full competitive analysis on my desk by Friday. Violette, I want revised projections assuming a 4-month timeline instead of 6.
Translation. Augustus was siding with Marcus but wanted it to look like compromise. The meeting continued for another hour. Quarterly reports, expansion strategies, personnel issues, and Violette participated when required, but mostly felt like she was performing a role she'd been hired to play. Competent daughter, reliable executive, woman who could handle anything except her father's approval. At 9:25 a.m., the meeting ended. At 9:28 a.m., Violette was standing outside her father's office, waiting. At 9:30 a.m. exactly, Augustus's assistant Patricia, different Patricia from HR, opened the door.
He'll see you now.
Violette walked into her father's office. It was exactly what you'd expect. Massive desk, leather chairs, awards and photos covering the walls, Augustus with politicians, celebrities, business leaders, Augustus receiving honorary degrees, Augustus cutting ribbons at hotel openings, not a single photo of his children.
Sit!
Augustus said without looking up from his computer. Violette sat. Augustus finished whatever he was typing, then finally looked at her. He was 68 but looked 55. Good genes, expensive skincare, and the kind of confidence that came from never doubting your own decisions.
Harrison has proposed a joint venture with the Rousseau Group in Paris. Luxury hotel. Prime location. Projected revenue of $40 million annually.
That's ambitious.
He's ambitious. That's why he's succeeding.
There it was. Less than 30 seconds into the conversation.
I'm succeeding too, Dad. Asia-Pacific revenue is up 38% since I took over that division.
And it should be up 50%. You're competent, Violette. But competent isn't enough. I need exceptional.
She'd heard this speech before, many times.
What do you want me to do differently?
I want you to stop being so cautious. Stop second-guessing every decision. Stop letting your emotions interfere with business.
My emotions?
You stormed out of Sunday dinner because your mother invited Julian. That's emotional. That's not the behavior of a COO.
Violette felt heat rising in her face.
Julian called me frigid and told me I'd die alone. Excuse me for not wanting to make small talk with him over pot roast.
Your personal life is irrelevant to this company. Learn to separate the two.
You invited him knowing it would upset me.
Your mother invited him because she, like me, thinks you gave up on that relationship too easily.
He was cruel to me.
He was honest with you. There's a difference.
Violette stared at her father. At this man who'd raised her, taught her the business, claimed to be proud of her, and then spent every interaction proving he wasn't.
Is that all?
No, I'm putting Harrison in charge of the Paris venture. I want you to support him. Provide whatever resources he needs.
You want me to support my younger brother on a project that should have gone through my approval?
I want you to be a team player.
I'm COO. Harrison is VP of European Operations. This should have been my project.
And if you'd shown the initiative Harrison has, it would have been. But you didn't. So it's his.
Violette stood up.
Anything else?
Don't take that tone with me.
What tone would you prefer? The one where I pretend this is fair? The one where I thank you for constantly comparing me to Harrison and finding me lacking?
Violette.
I have work to do, if you'll excuse me.
She walked out before he could respond, before she could say something she'd regret, before she could cry in front of him, which she'd learned early was the ultimate sign of weakness in Augustus Westbrook's world. The rest of the day was a blur. Meetings, conference calls, emails that never stopped coming. At 2:15 p.m., Violette ate lunch at her desk. Salad from the place downstairs, barely tasted, mostly pushed around while she reviewed contracts. At 4:30 p.m., she had another meeting with Marcus that was technically collaborative but felt like warfare. At 6:47 p.m., she finally left the office. Vincent was waiting with the car. Violette climbed into the back seat and closed her eyes, feeling the day's tensions settle into her shoulders like rocks. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sloan. How'd the meeting with Augustus go? Terrible. He's giving Harrison the Paris project. And he thinks I gave up on Julian too easily. Your father is a dick. Accurate. Drinks tonight? I'll buy. You can vent. Violette wanted to say yes, wanted to meet Sloan and drink wine and complain about her family and her job and the general unfairness of being a woman in a male-dominated industry. But she was so tired, so completely exhausted. Rain check. I just want to go home and hide. You sure? I'm worried about you. I'm fine. Just need sleep. Okay, but I'm calling you tomorrow to check in. Deal. Love you too. And Vi? Fuck your father, fuck Harrison, fuck Julian. You're brilliant and strong and they're all idiots. Violette smiled despite herself. Thanks. I needed that. By 7:15 p.m., she was back at the Ashford, riding the elevator up to the 4th floor, unlocking her door, stepping into her apartment and finally being alone. She dropped her bag, kicked off her heels, walked to her bedroom and stood in front of her mirror. The woman staring back at her looked exhausted, used up, like she'd spent the day being attacked from all sides and had nothing left to give. But there, in the corner of the mirror, the note, "You're stronger than you think." A neighbor. Violette reached up and touched it gently, like it might disappear if she wasn't careful.
Stronger than I think,
She whispered. Then she changed into sweats and a t-shirt, poured herself a very large glass of wine, and collapsed on her couch. At 9:15 p.m., she called Sloan.
Hey, I thought you were hiding tonight.
I am hiding, but I need to hear a friendly voice.
Talk to me. What happened after the Augustus meeting?
Violette told her everything. The Paris project going to Harrison, Marcus undermining her again, her father's constant disappointment. The way every single day felt like she was climbing a mountain only to be told she should have climbed faster.
You need to quit.
I can't quit.
Why not? Start your own company, or work somewhere else. Anywhere that doesn't involve your father criticizing you constantly.
Because Westbrook International is my legacy. My grandfather built it. My father expanded it. I'm supposed to take over someday. That's always been the plan.
Maybe the plan sucks.
Maybe, but it's my plan.
They talked for another 20 minutes before Sloan had to go. Early shift tomorrow at the hospital where she worked as a physician. Violette hung up and sat in the quiet of her apartment, wineglass in hand, thinking about legacies and plans and whether either was worth the cost. At 10:47 p.m., her mother called. Violette almost didn't answer, but guilt was a powerful motivator.
Hi, Mom.
Darling, I wanted to check on you. You seemed upset when you left Sunday.
I was upset. You invited Julian without telling me.
I thought it might help, seeing him in a neutral setting, having a conversation.
There's nothing neutral about my parents' dining room. And there's nothing left to say to Julian.
He misses you.
He called me frigid, Mom. He told me I'd die alone. Why would I want to be with someone who thinks those things about me?
Silence.
Maybe you were being sensitive. Julian has always been a bit direct.
Violette felt something break inside her chest.
Direct, he was cruel.
He was honest. Sometimes honesty hurts.
Sometimes honesty is just cruelty wearing a different mask.
Violette,
I have to go. It's late.
don't be dramatic.
I'm not being dramatic. I'm being done with this conversation, with defending my decisions, with being told I'm too sensitive or too emotional or too something.
Your father thinks.
I don't care what Dad thinks. I don't care what you think. I don't care what Julian thinks. I'm 35 years old and I get to decide what I will and won't tolerate in my own life.
She hung up, sat there in the dark, and started crying. Not the quiet, controlled crying she'd mastered over the years. This was the messy kind. The kind that came from spending a decade trying to be perfect and realizing perfect would never be enough. At 11:33 p.m., the crying finally stopped. At 11:45 p.m., she washed her face, brushed her teeth, and stared at the note taped to her mirror.
Stronger than I think.
She whispered to her reflection. Then she went to bed, lay there in the dark, and wondered who in this building had noticed she was falling apart, wondered if they knew how much that note had helped, wondered if she'd ever find out who they were. At midnight, just before sleep took her, Violette made a decision. Tomorrow she'd start asking around. Someone in the Ashford had left that note, and she was going to find out who.
Thanks for listening, and please subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
And for early access and bonus episodes, become a Patreon supporter today.